Well, what do we have here? A little DCP SideQuest, right?
Well,
Are we early?
You got to slow down.
Early.
You got to slow down, Tefty. That sounded a bit like an intro.
Whoa, no, that was a question, or that was more of an observation. Okay, right. Definitely not an intro.
As long as we don't name this podcast, I'm okay.
Yeah,
we named it.
This is
when we name it though, I'm out.
Oh, you're right. This is what the place where we talk about things that may or may not be related to Destiny, right?
True.
Yeah.
Yes.
This week more so than most.
Okay.
But I believe our guest
right
this week. Well, first of all, this is our first live show for this show, right?
Yeah.
Ever. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. This is our first live show
ever.
No, he's like, what did I get myself into?
Yeah, man.
Briar,
so I can't screw up.
Oh boy.
You can't edit my comments out.
No take backsies. All right.
Nobody remembers anything you say on the internet. It's fine.
No.
Yeah.
Nobody ever makes Reddit threads about it.
Ever.
Yeah.
No one is.
It's really clean and toxic free, honestly.
Yeah.
Briar, why don't you kick us off?
All right, so we've got a guest. This is the first time we've ever had a guest for SideQuest. It's Jason Schreier. Is it Schreier or Schreier?
Schreier.
Schreier.
I'm sorry. So Jason Schreier, Destiny fans will know Jason from the unbelievably, like, I don't know how to explain it because I'm not a reporter. I'm not in the press. But what you do is you seem to be able to dig for information way before anybody else gets it, and like it's not public information. Like the biggest one I can remember is when you announced that Destiny 2 was getting delayed. There have been plenty more before that. Like by the time that you had told us that Destiny 2 was going to get delayed, we knew that everything you were going to say about Destiny was in fact the truth, because time and time again, any article you wrote about Destiny 2 ended up being absolutely true. So not only are you an absolutely phenomenal journalist over at Kotaku, but you also wrote Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, one of my favorite books. Can you introduce yourself? Just tell us who you are and
Hello. Thank you for those kind words. The truth is that I have a lot of uncles at various video game companies, and they all just like telling me things. What can I say? All the kids at school are jealous. Yeah, so my name is Jason. I am the news editor at Kotaku.com, a website that covers video games and snacks and TV shows. And I wrote a book, Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, came out last year via HarperCollins. And I'm currently working on a new book, also with HarperCollins.
Nice.
That is coming out.
Do we get
next year, hopefully.
Title of the new book?
No, I don't have it yet. I haven't come up with it.
Is it going to be a similar kind of thing?
Is it a follow-up, essentially? Or different?
No, it's a follow-up in that it's still going to be about video games, and it's still going to be tons of original reporting, just like the first one,
nice.
and lots of me talking to people. But I wanted to do something a little bit different this time, rather than just do another 10 stories about game development. So it's going to be structured a little bit differently. But I think if you like the first one, you will like this one too.
Awesome.
The one hint that I can give is that it's like sort of about the future of games in some interesting ways, and sort of like how we got to how the video game industry has
loot boxes
changed in this drastic way. Loot boxes may or may not be involved.
So when you started talking about Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, you had told kind of the public that there'd be a chapter about Destiny, right? And so like the Destiny community was kind of waiting for this book to come out. But what I didn't expect about that book was how that every chapter was just as fascinating as the last. It didn't matter if you were talking about like a huge game company like Blizzard or a very small game company. Who was the one who did the
Stardew Valley?
Farmville?
Stardew Valley.
Stardew Valley. Thank you. It didn't matter the size of the company. It didn't matter like how successful the game was. Your chapter about Star Wars 1313 was fascinating, even though that game never actually came out. Like I really felt for the people involved. Like trying to get that game out. Like the book is more, it's more than just about the video games that you cover in each chapter. It's about the people that make them and how hard it is to do. It was really a fascinating book. I can't wait for the nect one now.
Jason, can you like where's your background in video games? Like where did you start?
Where did I start?
Because I got to ask you,
because
like
your
when we were
first
talking
console?
when we were trying to set up for this interview, I treated you like a reporter, right? Like that just didn't know, video games intimately, wasn't a gamer, but you do play video games. Like where did you start?
I play a lot of
What's your lineage?
I think it would be hard for me to work at Kotaku if I didn't play video games, because my full-time job is pretty much like writing about games all day. So my story is probably very similar to a lot of people in their 30s, in that I started on the NES and played tons of games. Final Fantasy blew my mind, the first Final Fantasy, but also Mario and Zelda and all the classics, and really cut my teeth with the Super Nintendo. Grew up on old school JRPGs, Final Fantasy VI and Secret of Mana and Earthbound and all that good stuff. And then just never stopped playing video games. I was mostly into RPGs growing up, and I'm still very into JRPGs. I'm actually in the process of reviewing Octopath Traveler for the Switch right now, which is a JRPG that comes out on Friday. And eventually switched from just playing RPGs to playing everything I possibly could, and now I play pretty much everything. So yes,
Assassin's Creed.
My background is playing everything.
Assassin's Creed on the PC.
Oh yeah, man. So I built a PC earlier this year and have just been playing the hell out of so many different things. Assassin's Creed Origins is so good at 60 frames a second, and then Assassin's Creed Odyssey has somehow become my most anticipated game of later this year. I just can't wait to play that. It's funny actually though, because I'm a huge Destiny fan, as you guys are well aware. But I actually never played much of Halo at all.
Okay.
Really?
And only really, actually, it's a funny story. My former colleague, Tina Amini, on the day Destiny came out, she was like, hey, we have this extra copy of Destiny. Do you want it? I was like, I don't know. I don't really think it's my thing. I'll probably play it for like 30 minutes and then move on to something else. I don't care that much. And then I played it and jumped into it and started playing with Kirk Hamilton, my podcast co-host at Kotaku Split Screen, and also colleague at Kotaku and good friend. And we just started grouping up together and playing. And then some of our other friends joined us. And eventually I found myself playing for hundreds and hundreds of hours in this ridiculous, stupid game.
Getting angry at somebody getting the Gallahorn. Or maybe you got the
I was the one who got
the one. Okay, of course,
and
yeah.
made her, and I was like, we were doing Crota's End, and you know that chest at the beginning of the Crota's End where you have to like keep grinding it and waiting until it appears and dying. God, this game is so stupid. I don't know why we like it, but basically you have to keep wiping your party to reset the chest location to make sure it appeared there. And for some reason, we all just spent our time killing ourselves over and over again to make a fucking chest appear. But anyway, we did that, and I got. And I just said to my raid chat, like out loud, I was like, I think I just got Gjallarhorn, and everyone's just like, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you.
Unfriend.
That's the proper response, I believe.
Yeah,
it is the appropriate response.
Yeah, it's funny. My wife would just say to me all the time, like, why do you play that game? You just spend it talking about how much you hate it the entire time. I was like, yeah, that's Destiny.
It's the game that we love to hate.
Yeah,
it is. It's the game where we travel through space complaining about Destiny.
Jason, like so much of the video game press and YouTube and like even like the press in general is just about kind of regurgitating like press releases and like like PR speak and stuff like that. But when I see a Jason Schreier article, it's not that. It's like it feels like old school real reporting. Like you did some digging and you got the details. You broke Fallout 76 was going to be more of a survival game than we might be used to. Like you seem to have these these details, and you're not just spouting out like what was sent to you in an email by Activision or by you know what I mean. Like how are you doing this? Like what makes you so good at this?
I don't know. That's a tough question. I guess because I'm persistent to the point of being really annoying. So that's the solution. Just annoy people until they tell you what you want. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've always wanted to be a reporter and always enjoyed reporting and just being just breaking news and reporting on things. And actually, those types of stories. I mean, I like breaking scoops and stuff like that, like Fallout 76 stuff. And I actually think that was an important story for details we can get into later if you guys want. But I'm more interested interested actually in stories like the ones that I told in my book, where it's stories that people will not find out about anyway. Like, I know that eventually everyone was going to find out what Fallout 76 was. I know that eventually everyone was going to find out Destiny 2 was delayed or whatever. I'm way more interested in stories that are like, here's why Destiny's story turned out the way it did, or here's why Mass Effect Andromeda turned out the way it did, or like the stories that I published in Bloodstone and Pixels. Those are the types of stories I think are way more valuable for someone in my position to be able to tell, rather than telling people what they're going to find out anyway, because there is some merit to telling people what they're going to find out anyway. But I think that it's more important for me to be focusing on stuff that's about stories that they're not going to find out about anyway, and reporting on important issues surrounding video game culture and the video game industry, like crunch and unionization and other hot topic things.
Is there anything is there anything behind that, like, that motivates you? It seems like you're focusing on the conditions or the characteristics of working as a developer in the industry. Why have you attached to that as a theme for some of your reporting?
Yeah, I mean, I think it doesn't get talked about enough. There are some outlets out there who are doing some really good work on shedding some light and probing people about that sort of thing. Vice's Waypoint has been really good about pushing people on that, and some other folks, Austin and Patrick over there, are really good about that. And I think that it's really important to be exposing and shedding some lights on some of the conditions that people have to go through in order to make games, especially because the internet discourse is so much of like, oh my God, Bungie is so lazy. Why can't they do this? Why can't they do that? And it's not really like laziness to call game developers lazy when oftentimes they're working 16-hour days just to finish these ridiculously ambitious projects that they're working on is misguided, to say the least. And I think that anything that I can do to help kind of correct the record and make it clear that a lot of people are doing a lot and putting a lot of hard work and that conditions are not exactly great for these people. I think that A, it can push for change, and B, it can help inform your average video game fan more about what's really going on.
It was a striking moment when you were talking about The Witcher 3 in your book, and you mentioned that they went into a hardcore crunch. And then you mentioned, but at least they got paid overtime because it's law in Poland.
Yes.
Wow.
Unlike every other developer.
Wow.
Yeah, not like the US.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
What?
So
how can they change that from your perspective of like reporting on these? How could they possibly put in place changes to not have those things where essentially the death crunch happens and then people get extremely burnt out? Some people can persevere because that's just part of their what makes them their tenaciousness. But like a lot of people get burnt out really fast from that stuff. Yep. What do you think in your perspective?
People who persevere are often younger people as opposed to people with kids. The people with kids tend to just leave for other industries.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there have been no solutions yet. I think the only real solution,
aside from Poland with a law.
Yeah, well, but even there, it's like the crunch is so bad at a place like CD Projekt Red that it can be really brutal for people. I think the only solution that I can see is for game developers to unionize and for them to be able to collectively bargain with the people who work for them and make sure that they're being treated fairly and handle it based on like a studio by studio basis, right? So like if you're at Naughty Dog, I know that Naughty Dog has this huge reputation for crunching. I cover them in my book. They are big on crunch. They crunch a lot, and a lot of them, people go to Naughty Dog knowing what they're going to get themselves into. I think for the people there, maybe they say, okay, we don't want to like limit our hours if they wind up unionizing, hypothetically, right? They might say, we don't necessarily want to limit our hours because we want to make sure that we can put in extra hours because that's what we do to make Naughty Dog quality games. Okay, if that's what the people want, fine. But maybe instead they say, okay, we're going to push for making sure every hour we spend at the office is paid and paid fairly and paid well to everybody. Because right now that's not the case. We all get salaries, and everyone in the US or a lot of people in the U.S. in office jobs and blue collar jobs in the U.S. tends to get paid by salaries, and therefore they're not getting overtime hours.
Right.
So instead, those folks might say, and this is all hypothetical, it can be whatever they want based on what they as a staff say, hey, this is what we're going to collectively bargain for. Instead, they might say, hey, we want to be paid for that overtime. Or another studio might say, we want to limit it so that we can't be asked to stay 14 hours a day because we think that's ridiculous and nobody should be asked to do that for video games. The point of unionization, and I don't want to get super political here because this might be beyond the scope of what you guys want to talk about, but the whole point would be to take the power from the executives making $20 million bonuses on top of it all and give at least some of that power back to the people who are actually putting their blood, sweat, and pixels into it.
Absolutely.
And just like being able to collectively bargain, I think can give you the type of power that you wouldn't be able to have if you were just a worker on your own, being like, hey, why are we doing this?
That brings up
people age out of video game development. Like you mentioned that when you have kids, you don't want to do this anymore. You do a different business. Is that, you think that affects like why they can kind of get abused by the management?
Absolutely. I've heard so many stories of like senior level developers who have just left because they couldn't handle the conditions of games. I've heard so many stories about game companies that can't fill senior level positions because there are so few of them left.
Wow.
And actually, if you just pick a random company and like look on their job listings page, you will probably see a lot of openings for senior level positions because those are the hardest to fill. Oh yeah. I mean, I've spoken to people regularly who just started leaving for other gigs. I actually did a lot of reporting on Visceral Games last year when it closed, and I wrote a whole big story about what happened to them and their canceled Star Wars project and whatnot. And one of the anecdotes I heard pretty recently was that when that studio shut down, this is the studio behind Dead Space and Battlefield Hardline, and it was an EA-owned studio that they shut down last October. When EA shut them down, they had, I don't know, about 80, 100 people, something like that. The stat I heard was that 50% of them went to just non-gaming companies in the Bay Area, like Facebook and Google, because they offered better pay and better conditions. And they were just like, why would we stay in games when we're working our asses off being paid less than these other companies? Although Google's getting into gaming too, but that's another story.
Do you think that forecasts a certain implosion that's bound to happen in the industry? Like I know the industry has had like the almost like real estate type of ups and downs to it. Do you think like in terms of a gamer's perspective, this is like kind of one of the most amazing times ever to be a gamer with all the options that are coming out from indie to AAA? But do you think there's going to be like this bubble that's about to burst from all these conditions? Because it seems like it's non-sustainable.
I don't know, because the barrier for entry in terms of making a game is lower than it's ever been. I mean, you have people who are just solo devs making these incredible projects. I think we've already seen the bubble burst in AAA development. Like, look how few big AAA games companies are releasing. Like, look at Activision. They release 2 games a year. Take-Two, the people behind 2K and Rockstar, they release like 1 game a year max. A lot of these companies have just withdrawn and gone into this world of like, hey, we're going to make this one game as a service, and that's going to be the only game. And that's where we're seeing the kind of it'll be interesting to see what happens with that particular bubble, because as so many of these companies are pursuing the Destiny model of like, we're going to make this game and you're going to play it forever. There's only so much time we all have in the day to play all these games. So that'll be an interesting thing to watch. I don't know what's ultimately going to happen as far as like burnout in the industry and senior level positions being left unopened. I think it might affect us in ways that we can't even see, just like more bugs and more people having to work even harder because there are no experienced people above them, and just less like games not being finished as quickly and other things that might be invisible to us. But I don't think it's going to lead to a crash. I think there are too many ways for video games to be making money these days, but I don't know. I don't want to prognosticate.
Well, it's interesting. It brings me the question of a couple things that you talked about. CD Projekt Red is, I read somewhere that their pay is relatively low compared to development positions here, and so in other industries, when labor has gotten too expensive, and the cost of, so if the market can't bear raising the cost of a video game above $60. and the labor cost is too high, won't a lot of these jobs be shipped overseas or to other countries where the labor is less expensive? And a lot of these video game industry positions won't be there any longer in the US, at least.
That's already happening. I mean, if you look at the credits of any AAA game released in the past 10 years, you'll see like a countless list of names from India and Egypt and China and all sorts of other outsourcing companies. That's already totally happening. The only reason that it's not happening right now with every single field in game development is because the talent just isn't there, and people are looking in the Bay Area and California and Los Angeles for the most talented designers and programmers and writers and people with experience, and that can never be outsourced. I mean, if that could be outsourced, EA and Activision would be doing it right now. Like there's no way they would be paying San Francisco salaries if they could pay India salaries.
Yeah. It's funny because you look at a studio like Bungie, for example, and I from the employees that I've worked with, I play with a lot of guys that work there. Mm-hmm. They seem to be very happy with the way the company treats them, and I wonder if those outsourced jobs, like if they're more sweatshop type like environments, or like what the working conditions of those places are. Have you had any experience or looked into what like the environment of CD Projekt Red, for example, is, or other of those India, China-based companies? Is it similar?
Important distinction. CD Projekt Red is a developer on its own. It's not an outsourced place. It doesn't do
right. I know. Yeah, I understand.
So the development conditions there are very similar to any tough, like Naughty Dog, the likes of Naughty Dog, where it's just really brutal work conditions and lots of crunch. People there who some of whom I'm sure are unhappy, some of whom who are super happy to be working on one of the most anticipated games ever. And like The Witcher 3, I'm sure they were thrilled to work on that. Like, you have that on your resume, you can get a job pretty much anywhere. I don't know anything about the work conditions in outsourced studio like India and China. That's a good question. But I know that Bungie, actually, very much to their credit, has been doing a very good job of working on improving their work conditions and making sure that people aren't going through death marches, because Bungie as a studio has gone through some very, very terrible death marches. Halo 2 was infamous, had an infamous crazy crunch on that. Destiny 1 had some bad crunch, I know, and especially the DLCs, they had to do some really bad crunch. So yeah, I know that Bungie has made a lot of effort, put a lot of effort into fighting crunch and trying to improve things for the people who work there.
Yeah, it's super interesting because I know a few people who work at Bungie, and just seeing the difference over the past few years in terms of their work hours it's been a huge difference. Mm-hmm. Most people are leaving at a reasonable hour and getting home and having dinner with their family, and it's huge. And I know a lot of people are much happier to not have to be doing those insane hours.
Yeah, especially when you're not a kid anymore. Like when you're in your 20s,
right.
Yes.
Like, yeah, it's
you have families, children.
When you have kids, yeah.
How do they achieve something like that? Like, are they like, do they have to just accept that the game is going to get pushed back? Do they hire more people to make up for the workload? Like, how do they make that happen?
I think it's a combination of everything. It's number one is just planning, I think, and just doing your best to try to scope properly and do product management and figure out how much time you need, and then just add as much buffer as possible. Like, know that you're going to need even more time than you think you need, the most conservative elements. And then part of it is just like getting more people on. Bungie is probably like 750 people by now, 800 people, plus they have Vicarious Visions and High Moon and Activision support. So there are a whole lot of people working on this game. It also it changes the equation when you're working on a live game, although they've had some really tough deadlines. I don't know what their current roadmap looks like for the next 2-3 years as far as Destiny releases. But I know that a lot of people there have regretted the cadence that they agreed to at the beginning of this whole Destiny experiment, with Destiny 1, then expansion, then Destiny 2, then expansion. And clearly that was never going to be sustainable. Clearly it wasn't.
In your book, you talked about the leaving Microsoft, the heyday of, oh my God, we've broken free from Papa Microsoft, and now we're on our own, we're doing our own thing. And then they get into a contract with Activision, and have to deal with that aspect of it. And something that I thought was very fascinating in the book that you talked about was they had grown substantially, and then they were working on Destiny, and they didn't want to make a first-person shooter. They had done Halo, and all these people were hired on thinking that.
Well, some of them did.
Well, yeah,
some of them did.
Yeah, but they released Halo, and a lot of people joined the Bungie development thinking that they were going to make Halo or something like Halo, but yet Destiny originally wasn't intended to be like a first-person shooter. It was they wanted to depart.
Was it Tavern something? What was it?
Yeah, like a third-person
Dragon Tavern was the original
third-person RPG type of thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, those are some of the original prototypes. I think that it became a first-person shooter pretty quickly after they entered production and started figuring out, hey, what is this game actually going to be?
Well, what was fascinating about that is you were talking about the gravity well of all these people, like hundreds of employees who had jumped into the project thinking that they were going to make the next Halo, and then the designers were like, well, actually, we want to do this, and people were like, let's make Halo, and like that was an extremely fascinating perspective, because that's part of that.
Yeah, it's
like getting all those people focused in the right direction, and ultimately it became a first-person shooter.
Yeah, it's interesting. There are a lot of interesting factors here, complicated factors here. One is that I think it's tough to have a strong vision and execute on that vision and communicate that vision to everybody else with a new IP, especially when it's a new IP with this concept that nobody understands, because it's like, what is this? Is it an MMO? Is it Halo? What is it? And I think we didn't, even when the first game launched, they still didn't know what it was. And we still didn't know it. We all kind of figured it out.
Do they know now?
Maybe. No, yeah. It's clear at this point that they're still going through growing pains, as many live games are. It will be. I am really fascinated to see what happens with Anthem at launch and Division 2 at launch, and to see if they go through some of the same growing pains that Destiny 2 went through.
It's like the end.
But yeah, it is interesting how
curse.
Yeah, for sure. Although I did hear, I was speaking to someone who was working on the Division 2 pretty recently, and that person was like, we're pumping up this end game. It's going to be awesome, blah, blah, blah. 8-person raids. That'll be interesting.
That's cool.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Anthem doesn't seem to be talking about their end game.
Well, there's plenty of time left. We barely seen the game. Sure. But yeah, with Destiny, it became this so when you have a game studio, so much of development and what it's like over there is based on culture and knowledge and like what the studio knows and shares. Like if you think about your own workplaces, it's like you got to think of like the way that an office functions and how so much of it is based on the culture of the people around there and like what sort of knowledge base they have. And with Halo, they have this knowledge base of like, here's how we make a first-person shooter. Here's what the camera looks like. Here's what the reticles on screen look like. Here's what the animation looks like. Here's what the shooting looks like. Here's what the tools look like, all that stuff. And I think that played a large part in Destiny becoming what it was, is that this was a studio that's what they knew how to make. And I have no idea what their next new IP will look like and what they're envisioning for it. I haven't heard anything about it, but I'm very curious to see if it'll just look like another shooter with.
What have you heard about that? Like that they announced that they were working on something else, right? They announced that they made a partnership, a capital partnership with another company, a substantial amount of money.
NetEase, $100 million.
Right. And so other than that, along with the commitment that they were going to continue to fund and support Destiny, we don't know much.
Yeah, no, I had heard a few months ago that Jason Jones, who is the co-founder of the studio and pretty much a top dude there, even though he's not technically the CEO, that he was spinning off his own new IP, and that's what he had been working on for a while. And I believe that is the one and the same with the thing that they just announced when they announced that NetEase deal, when they were talking about building new worlds. And I wouldn't be shocked if you want some speculation. And please, this is very much speculation. If you post this on Reddit, just know that this is speculation. But I wouldn't be surprised if in the immediate future, like 2 or 3 years, something like that, Bungie winds up severing with Activision. Activision winds up buying the Destiny IP from them, and Bungie just focuses on their own new projects. Because I don't think anyone's super happy about the way that the the Bungie Activision Destiny collaboration has worked out.
No kidding.
That's interesting.
Interesting. Honestly, it was interesting. I really like Tessiverse.
Activision showed off like their pillars of Activision. I can't remember exactly what they called it.
Yeah.
Like there was a bunch of like really big names, but Destiny wasn't on there. It was like really like.
Well, so the context for that was, and I tweeted this a couple of months ago. So they were doing an earnings call, Activision, and basically they showed off this slideshow that was like, here's all the money we made with all these games that we released in the past year or so, and it was like all the Blizzard stuff and Call of Duty and blah blah blah. And yeah, Destiny 2 was not on there. I imagine because they were not super pleased about many of the numbers that they hit with Destiny 2, and it did not live up to their expectations in a lot of ways.
Like initial sales wise, or like microtransaction wise.
I think sales. I all I heard about sales wise was that it was like it was fine. I know they have super high expectations, so fine might be like, I don't know, millions of copies. But I know for sure that the engagement numbers were way below what they wanted. And what that means is that the number of people who kept playing after the game launched was, which is why we see them now going like, hey, we got to revert back to Destiny 2 in every way possible. And now introducing all this new stuff with Forsaken and trying to save the end game and salvage the hardcore players.
Yeah. I mean,
don't answer this if you don't want, but I've always kind of wondered, like, since you get these like stories about Bungie, what's your relationship with Bungie proper? Like, do they hate you, or like are you guys good? Like,
that's a good question. I mean, I don't really know. They're not. You might have noticed this, but Bungie is not very good at communicating in general. So, like, I've gotten just mixed messages from them over the years about like it used to be. So at E3 last year, before Destiny 2, I had a great interview with Luke Smith, and Bungie was like, "Yeah, sure, you can talk to him." And he and I did a podcast together on my podcast, Kotaku Split Screen, and I was talking to all their people and just friendly with all their people. And then this year, there was like a little bit of drama that I won't get into involving us and them. And I did wind up going and playing Gambit, which was really cool, but we didn't wind up doing any interviews. And I would have liked to do some interviews with the developers there. So who knows? With Bungie, it's hard to tell. It's a studio with 750 people in it, and I'm sure that some of them hate me and some of them like me, and most of them probably don't care. That's my guess. I did hear anecdotally that there were a lot of copies of my book floating around the studio, so I hope they enjoyed it at the very least.
Fascinating.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't think that I don't know what the studio's like official position is on me. I'm sure it's changed, and I'm sure they've had lots and lots of angry meetings about me over the years. But yeah, I don't know.
That's funny.
It's interesting because like as a fan of the show, I have mixed feelings about that type of reporting. There's people that want those leaks, right? And they want to know everything they can get about it's not, you were talking earlier about two types of reporting. There is like letting something that everybody's going to experience anyway out early. And then there's that other conversation. Mm-hmm. That other conversation is something that's intriguing and fascinating to me because it's a look behind the curtain. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you. That's much more fascinating for me. But as a player, the other information, the information that comes out early before the release is set, even though I try to avoid that on the internet, right, on Twitter or whatever,
the spoilers,
you always end up something ends up getting to your head, and you get the surprise gets spoiled. And I think that's where the split is with the gaming community on how they view articles like that from Kotaku and from
a couple of things. First of all, the surprise of seeing something on the internet versus seeing it in an E3 trailer is like marketing versus marketing. So that's kind of nonsense in my book. I think that story spoilers are one thing, but spoilers of marketing trailers are quite another. The other thing is that we actually haven't reported any things that would be considered Destiny leaks in a long time. I don't think since before Destiny 2 came out. So if they're pissed off at that, I mean, the only thing that I've released in the past year since I spoke to Luke Smith last E3 is my book. So maybe they were pissed off at that. I don't know. But
I wasn't speaking. Let me clarify. I wasn't specifically talking about you in general, but more of that type of journalism and the type of information that's released, not necessarily purely Kotaku, because there's definitely other websites that also produce, and not just Destiny, but other games as well. How does the player base react to quote unquote leaks versus early information? And I completely agree with you that marketing is an issue, is not an equivalency thing, but I'm talking about when people spoil the actual in-game content that isn't designed to be marketing or release time.
What about when Bungie spoils that Cade 6 is going to die before the game?
See that kind of stuff.
That upset a lot of people.
That not just
was a
the
marketing
fact that
spoiler.
he died.
Yeah,
No, I completely agree, and I'm of the line. I'm of the purist line that will say I want to play it and be surprised on the day one. So it's really interesting, like how that happens, right? How can you block yourself off? You'd have to almost like put yourself in the closet.
I think it's fascinating that like there's two types of players. The one that like is like a weekend player that picks up a game, plays through, maybe finishes it, maybe plays like 5-10 hours of the weekend, and they could care less about what happened with the studio and what happened with the development. Right. And then there's the people who invest thousands of hours in Destiny and say, why did this decision happen? Why were these choices made with the end game? Why is there no communication? What is going on? What I found fascinating was that your book revealed quite a bit of that mechanic in there of like, it seems like there's a lot of people in the office that don't want to connect with each other and say, this is what we need to tell people out in the fan base. The people who really,
it sounded like the decisions weren't getting made like at the top level. And then
at a certain point, it's like, you're at the studio and it's like, who is even responsible for these decisions? I don't know. Is it you? I don't know. Is it you? No, it must be you. I mean, a lot of times that's the case, especially when you're talking about a studio as huge as Bungie and that has trouble communicating. I mean, we've seen public examples of the studio just being unable to communicate. Like there was some PvP change a couple years ago, and
after Taken King,
yeah, exactly. And someone from Bungie said on Twitter, "Oh, that's not true." And then it turned out they just didn't know because and you gotta like, I don't envy that Bungie has to communicate so many granular details about their game and the decisions they're making to so many different people. Like, it's hard enough just on my team. My team is 14, 15 people, 16 people, and we have a hard enough time communicating everything among us. I can't even imagine what it's like with 750 people. But that's been an issue.
Yeah, as players, we feel it.
The way you describe kind of like the development of Destiny in the book, it occurred to me there were three problems. You correct me if I'm wrong, but it was like there was like an initial lack of like design direction, right? Like they didn't know exactly what they were making while they were making it, but they had like not millions. They had hundreds of people coming in to make something, and they had to put them to work somewhere. So like a lot of work kind of got repeated and was not necessarily used. And then they had indecision from management. Like they didn't know exactly, like you talk about like Marty O'Donnell, kind of asking like, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? And then all of a sudden he gets like 1,000 lines of dialogue that he's got to record in one day. And it was like craziness. And then the dev tools themselves were so slow that it was very hard to do things rapidly. Do you think any of those things have changed? Like, from the design of Destiny 1, like in the subsequent years, like have any of those things been addressed and fixed?
Yeah, and to different extents. I mean, some of these are all problems that affect a lot of different game studios, not just Bungie. With Bungie, the story reboot that happened was pretty unique. That's something that doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen pretty often. I mean, those are issues that all game studios are just dealing with constantly and trying to fix. It's like, how do we make our tools better? Can we make our tools better? How much time do we spend working on our tools as programmers versus working on stuff for the actual game? Because any time that a programmer spends on tools is time that may not be spent fixing bugs or working on features for the next content drop or something like that. I mean, these questions are being addressed all the time, and Bungie has certainly been working on them. I think the one that is most addressed at this point is the vision, because now everyone knows what the game is And I think that more people, certainly more people at Bungie and the other studios working on Destiny, are familiar and have played the game a lot more, as opposed to some of the earlier days where not a lot of people were actually playing the game, or maybe at least some of the people weren't actually playing the game that much. I think it's a lot easier to know exactly where you're going when your game has been out for this long.
Sure.
But yeah, it's still hard to make content. It's still just as difficult to make new stuff, as we saw with like the lack of output. I mean, the fact that and it's been, I don't know, 3.5 years, almost 4 years, and we still do not have a single new race is kind of crazy, right? But that's
the story reset story also struck me as incredible. And not only was it incredible that it happened, but like the fact that that story almost seemed to repeat itself for Destiny 2. You know, like where they all of a sudden, you know, you're reporting a year before or 8 months before we expected Destiny 2 to come out that, you know, there's new leads involved. They've pushed it back. Like, I don't know that they rebooted the whole story like they did in Destiny 1, but they definitely put new people in charge, and they, like, you know, they got a new, was it CEO?
Yeah, so they did not reboot the whole story. It was always going to be like tower explodes and all this stuff, and people Cabal come in and made. I know that, yes, it was rebooted in April of 2016, so about 16 months before the game actually shipped. The CEO change was as a result of the Destiny 2 delay, among other things, in January of that year. So a lot of different changes for Bungie in that year. But the director change was, that was when Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy took over from the previous director. And a lot of rebooting, a lot of decisions that had to be made really quickly on the fly. A lot of decisions clearly that were misguided, like the new weapon system. But I know that a lot of those systems decisions were made very last minute, and probably there wasn't a ton of time to be playtesting and experimenting and seeing what really worked, because they were on such a tough time crunch. Like, they could not delay it again after delaying it an entire year. So it was a tough position for them to be in.
In the book, you talk about like the Supercut, like that was like the Destiny 1 kind of story Supercut, and it was 2 hours or something like that, and you know, it's supposed to explain to the studio, you know, what this story is going to be, and it you know, it flopped pretty hard. But you also say that the team that wrote that initial story also wrote the grimoire. That is actually, even though there was a lot of complaints that it wasn't in the game, and like, why is like the bulk of the story on their website and not in the game? It's actually really loved by Destiny fans, right? The grimoire is some of the best story in Destiny. So it makes me wonder, have you ever seen the Supercut?
No.
It makes me wonder how good that story actually was.
Well, so just to be clear, so the Supercut itself, I believe, and Joe Staten has not wanted to comment on any of this, so I haven't heard anything from him, but I believe that the Supercut was created entirely by him. Or almost entirely by him, as opposed to his writing team. The Supercut also, one of the problems with it, I don't think the way it was characterized to me, and I've been trying to get someone to show it to me and working on it, but haven't been able to get it yet. But the way that it was conveyed to me was the problem with the Supercut, which was this video presentation that was supposed to sum up the story, was the presentation and the way that it was all written in this rough way and had all these rough like animatics and bubbles and left a lot to the viewer's imagination. And I think a lot of it made sense to Joe, and it was kind of, his hand was forced when it came to making it, but it wasn't exactly like, this is my best work, this is what the best version of the story is going to be. It was more like, this is my PowerPoint presentation and hopefully it'll be good. And it's kind of like, it makes a lot more sense when you see it in the game, but it might not make sense here. And
was it like an attempt to like draw the line in the sand and say, this is what the story is going to be, let's start working on this story and let's start making this a cohesive thing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was super cohesive the way that it was told. I think it was more of a problem of presentation than anything. And he had a large team. There were a lot of people, a lot of writers there. A lot of writers contributed to the grimoire. A lot of super talented people A lot of those people are now gone. I believe that the writing department there now is entirely different than it was even 2 years ago. So there's been a lot of turnover there, a lot of changes there. And I mean, I can't really accurately describe the Supercut without seeing it, because I'm just describing what other people have told me. But the way it was conveyed to me was like this was a problem in the way it was presented more than anything. Like it seemed full of cliches and disastrous and trite and just wasn't working. And then it was also, I mean, the way it was described to me was that it was a problem of Jason Jones not giving proper direction or not like knowing exactly where they wanted to head until later on. So it's a whole mess of a process, and there's no real way to like boil it down to right and wrong and who made the mistakes when, because it's also complicated and tricky, and all these things are.
I know we had a Briar. Like, here's the thing. Like, this is a conversation, so we're used to the pacing of our main podcast, which is 2 to 3 hours long, and the SideQuest one is an hour, and we're already almost 10 minutes to the.
I could do another 4.
Yeah. So. I just want to remind us of like the time, just so we can make sure that we respect Jason's time and the timing of the podcast. I'm sure we can go over by a little bit, but I do want to. Can I bring up one more topic before we go on to Twitter questions?
Sure.
I kind of wanted to.
You're asking me? Sure.
Yeah.
You have my permission.
Thank you. So one of your writers, David Morris, did is it Morris? David Morris from. Okay. Anyway, no, he's not yours. I apologize. He works for. Never mind. Okay. You guys wrote a piece on. It's from Fortune magazine. It doesn't matter. So you guys wrote a piece on that. No. There is a. You did an article. It's referenced in here on it. But of the Jessica Price and Peter Fries being fired because of their communication with fans on Twitter. I just wanted to hear your take on that. And
this is the ArenaNet deal.
Yeah, this is with ArenaNet, and kind of like
Guild
what
Wars.
your understanding is of how that's all played out.
Yeah, I mean, do you want me to explain what happened for people who might
Yeah, a
not
little
know the
bit. Yeah,
story?
absolutely.
So the context here is that Jessica Price, who was a narrative designer on ArenaNet, was tweeting about some stuff about Guild Wars 2, just tweeting about some story stuff and design decisions. And someone named Duror tweeted at her and in sort of like a polite way, being like, hey, I have some feedback for you. Have you considered this, and this? And she quote tweeted him and was like, like, I'm paraphrasing, I don't have the tweets in front of me, but she was kind of trashing him for like telling her how to do his job. And she called him, I believe something like, she was like, don't tweet at me rando ass hats or something like that. Again, this is very much me paraphrasing. So you should check the article. Yeah, the article just got posted in Twitch, so people should check that out for the exact tweets. I'm actually going to pull this up. Yeah, she said, allow me, a person who does not work with you, explain to you how to do your job. She was like quoting, kind of like mocking him. Anyway, what happened was the Guild Wars 2 subreddit went after her, and a lot of people on social media exploded. Eventually, it found its way into the Gamergate world, the terrible, terrible world of Gamergate. And so they all went after her, too. They've gone after her in the past. They called her social justice warrior, blah, blah, blah. And they also went for this guy, Peter Fries, who was sticking up for her. And then what happened was Mike O'Brien, the president of ArenaNet, wrote in a Guild Wars 2 forum post, recently 2 of our employees failed to uphold our standards of communicating with players. Their attacks on the community were unacceptable. As a result, they're no longer with the company. So basically, they publicly and kind of demeaningly fired both writers, Jessica Price and Peter Fries. So my take, just my personal take, is that this is very depressing. And the reason that it's very depressing is because this company showed that it cares more about kowtowing to angry Twitter users than it does about protecting its employees. It's depressing that a woman can't be outspoken on Twitter without just getting mobbed about it. I don't think that, I mean, whether or not her particular tweets were professional or nice or whatever isn't really, it's kind of beside the point in my view, because I feel like if my boss did something like that, threw his employees under the bus in that fashion, I would certainly not want to work there. I would certainly not feel protected, not feel comfortable working in a position like that. The other thing, and I think the internet kind of loses the nuance here, is that there is a wide array of punishments between not doing anything and firing someone.
Right.
And in general, like if when I do something at work that is wrong, like when I screw up at work, or like when I get reprimanded by my boss, it is not a public firing is not the first step, right? And she has actually said, Jessica Bryce has said, that she was never warned before about her Twitter, and in fact that she had said in her job interview, hey, I'm an avid social media user, and I get really passionate and outspoken on Twitter. And they said, fine, we accept that. So it's the type of thing where, like, not only did they take the biggest, most far out extreme and did it publicly, they made it clear to their employees, ArenaNet, that they don't support them.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I feel like if Mike O'Brien or whoever else, her bosses at work, had taken issue with her tweet, there are so many things they could have done. They could have talked to her privately about it first and foremost, and like, if they had to say something, then not thrown her under the bus in the process. And then seeing that when Mike O'Brien put out this even longer statement, which I think you can find on the Polygon article about it, that was just like embarrassing and horrifying. So yeah, so long story short, no matter what Jessica Bryce did or did not do, this is very telling of the way that ArenaNet values its employees, and that to me is the most depressing part of it.
It's interesting because I read your articles, the article, so I knew what position you would take. And normally I play a devil's advocate role on this, and I just couldn't find a strong position to counter you on and to have this conversation about. The only thing I could come up with is, and you sort of addressed it already in your response, is, I work for a school district, right? And so in my position,
as you can tell by the mustache.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
They won't let me within 1,000 yards of the. So I work for a school, and I hold a position of moral authority. That's what it's in my contract, right?
Also displayed by the mustache.
Guys, stop. Facial hair does not make the man. Well, anyway, so there's a story behind this, Jason. It was for a good cause, but anyway. So the reality is that, like, if I do something in public that is, or I get arrested for something, or do something illegal, or there's a whole list of things that I could do wrong and get fired on, right away, because I'm working with kids, and if I do anything inappropriate, I can't be around other people's kids. So there's a way that I could understand sort of some actions of employers going to that place and going, boom. But what is that? What is that for the video game industry? And is there even that place?
Yeah, I mean, the important thing there is that you know exactly what is expected from you. And if you know that if you do X, you will be fired. This was not the case here. This was the case where Jessica Bryce did X, and the mob got so angry that ArenaNet felt like they had to placate the mob rather than protecting her. And I think that if she had in her contract, and she has said this, she was not warned before about her social media behavior, and that she said in her job interview, like, hey, I'm loud and I am a big advocate on social media. So this is not someone who shocked them all by suddenly turning into this like passionate, outspoken person on Twitter. If they had a social media policy in their contract that said, if you do this on social media, you will be fired, then that would be an entirely different thing. You know what I mean? Like, you are very familiar with the expectations that are in your line of work, and therefore, I mean, for me, for example, like, I know that plagiarism is the biggest sin that one can commit in journalism, and I know that if I were to plagiarize, I would probably be fired immediately, and like, my career would be in shambles, as it should be. But I am very aware of that. If I were suddenly called into my office because I tweeted something that my boss didn't like, and he was like, I'm going to publicly fire you and throw you under the bus on Twitter, I would be like, what the fuck? Like, that's not like, when were those expectations set? Right. And it really says a lot when a company, instead of protecting its employees, is placating the mob. That to me says a lot about where that company's loyalty.
It's interesting. It's interesting because I remember, you know, there was a lot of talk on that Guild War 2's forum about some of the inappropriate comments she'd made to like Total Biscuit. I wonder if that weighed into it. So she's saying that she never was contacted by the upper management, that her comments were inappropriate. But what do you think about like those comments? Does that Total Biscuit comment draw the line? Is that a line that you can't cross, or is that inappropriate? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I don't think that her personal opinions on Twitter have much to do with her job being a writer on a video game. And if a company, I think the company needs to make its social media policies clear. And if they want to say, hey, like this, and this is not allowed, then they should make that very clear.
Right. And I think that's ultimately the clearest point.
It sounds like a bunch of bad decisions on both sides, just like jumbled
together.
together.
I mean, it just bothers me. And yeah, I mean, you could certainly argue that Jessica Price's Twitter comments were not the greatest idea in the world. But I think that when a company kind of just throws their own employee under the bus, right, that really bothers me. And it goes back to what we were talking about before with unionization and worker rights. And it really feels like companies in the video game industry just have so much power and
like they
so
own
much,
you and your
and they just mistreat their employees in such a like heinous way. And that really bugs me, the way that it doesn't feel like these companies have their employees' backs. That really bugs me. Like it feels like they just see their employees as cogs in this massive factory to be just like ground up and used and then thrown away. And this to me is a very prime example of that. So like, I'm not even arguing. I want to get into the questions of like, oh my God, was she wrong on Twitter? Was she bad on Twitter? Should she have insulted whoever? Should she have made fun of Total Biscuit? Like, I don't think that's relevant here, at least in my perspective. Like there's the two arguments are that one, there's a far wide of potential punishments and disciplinary actions between firing publicly and not doing anything, and two, that just it is yet another example of companies not having any respect, not having their employees' backs, and that is just a common theme in the video game industry. Well,
to me, some of her comments did cross the line, and the more important thing for a line of what's appropriate, but I think what's more important is that companies need to be more explicit about their social media expectations or guidelines. Sure. I mean, like you said, like as a school administrator, I know what the consequences are if I have a social media account. I have a personal one and I have a work one. If I talk about education, it's in the work one. If I talk about video games, it's the personal one. And I think that a lot of people in the video game industry, based on my experience, when I look at, because I spend a lot of time on Twitter and I follow a lot of game developers, they need some serious social media, like, training. And I think one of the best things that a lot of game developers could do is separate their accounts. If they're going to talk about video games, I don't think they need to. I think that that's a good, probably, good first step is like if they're going to talk about the game that they work on, they might want to separate their personal views and stuff from their private. In a world where like it almost feels like people are encouraged to be on social media too by employers. Well, they are. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if she was, but like I know like to be on social media and to be kind of promoting your game and to talking to fans. I mean, that's a good thing, right? But like. I think things are going to go wrong sometimes. You got to be able to have people's back. I think it's having a clear, concise line of what is okay and what is not okay. Because then if someone doesn't know and they overstep the line that they don't know is a line, and then they're reprimanded for stepping over a line that they didn't know was a line, then it kind of makes people feel crappy about that. So I think if they just did some training and they were like, hey, this is what's okay, this is the kind of thing that's not okay. If you step over this line, then yeah,
it's worth noting, by the way, that while Jessica Price has triggered the ire of the mob, Hideki Kamiya from Platinum Games tweets abusive things towards his fans every single day and has for years, and just gets nothing but pats on the back for it. And I think that speaks a lot to a lot of different factors, but in large part the gender dynamics here. And I think
That's
that
interesting.
the video game industry has a long history, especially in the past, since the Gamergate started, in the past 4 years, of men going after women on social media for various invented missteps or real missteps, real grievances, but in a way that men do not get gone after. Because if Hideki Kamiya was in that position, or if this had been Hideki Kamiya saying that exact same thing, everyone would be laughing and complimenting it. So that's something that I hope people think about when they are considering all this, especially something that young men think about.
That's interesting. I wonder if there's that implicit bias there when you look at how you read a tweet or see somebody commenting, because I didn't think about it as a gender thing at all, but I'm sure some people saw it that way, and how they view, information on the internet is really based on where their perspective and where they're coming from. And this free, open, like, information place, the internet, the Twitter, the all these different places, right? They're accessible by everybody. And it goes to my point where you see a developer, commenting on politics, and then they also comment on, the game that they're working on and speaking to fans. And I think that muddies the water in a place that nobody benefits from, right?
I'm trying to post this link in Twitch.
We just saw it.
It's not working. It's a Kamea tweet.
You have
because I want people to see.
You go ahead and post it.
Oh, it says I can't because it's identical to the previous one that I sent.
You can. Yeah. All right. So I think we need to move on to Twitter questions, because we're already at an hour, and it would be nice to get some questions in.
I didn't do like regular Twitter questions. I asked for Twitter questions that, kind of would help out the interview process, because, I was really interested in like learning more about Jason. So we do have a couple of questions, but not that many. We had one question by Artandalus the Guardian about the GW2 firing scandal, so we'll skip over that. But Magic says, there's a feeling that since the base price of console PC games have not risen much in the last 20 years in base price, that gaming companies can no longer make a profit or survive. Can Jason address why gaming is profitable today and what does hurt profits?
Can you repeat that first part?
There's a feeling that since the base price of console PC games the
base price hasn't risen, but really it has, because you're no longer buying a game. Rare is the game that is only $60, and then that's it. Rare is the God of War of the world. Nowadays, it's more the Destinies, where you're buying something and then you're continuing playing it. Games as a service is the big buzzword that everybody is using these days, and you will see that more and more as the years continue, because $60 and then some is more of the model that is working for these publishers and making them bazillions and bazillions of dollars. I think that that's the world we're living in, because nobody wants to pay more than $60 for a game, but people will happily pay $60 and then buy skins for their favorite Destiny emote, or outfits for their favorite Destiny character, or their favorite Destiny emotes, or whatever. And that's what's making these companies bazillions of dollars. So that's ultimately what's going to happen. And it'll be interesting to see what happens when we hit that like oversaturation point of these live games on the marketplace. So I'm curious about that.
With the pushback from gamers and from governments about loot boxes, what do you think the path forward is with that?
I think loot boxes are not going to be very popular. We already saw that with EA. Some of the like messaging that I was hearing from EA people very early on this year was like, or right after Battlefront 2, so late last year, was, we're not, like, no way are we doing loot boxes again. And then as you saw at E3, they were like, no loot boxes in Battlefield, no loot boxes in Anthem. I think more companies will play that same card and say, hey, no loot boxes for us. So I wouldn't be shocked to see that be a common theme. No more loot boxes.
The last question we got from Twitter is from Jared Foster, who says, will Jason allow Destiny 3 to come out in 2019, or does he plan on delaying it like he did with Destiny 2?
Good question.
You really think Destiny 3 is coming out in 2019? I think chances are very slim. I would be shocked.
You got
to
your
see
answer,
Destiny
Jared.
3 come out this year.
It looks like he's delaying it.
Jason's
I mean,
delaying
I
it.
don't know. I don't think
Do you have
so.
a big red button right next to your desk at work, or you like
That is
delay?
yeah.
Delay.
You
Delay.
turn the dial to the next game, and you're like, I think we need to delay this one.
Exactly.
Can you not hit that button on Cyberpunk 2077?
Well, that's already like 2.5 years away, so don't worry. You don't have to do
Plenty of time to hit the button, right?
That game looks so pretty. Hey, can I ask you? So we're kind of we kind of went through Twitter questions, and I just want to maybe as we kind of round up this wind down this this interview. What do you from E3? What grabbed you as far as like games that you felt were that you connected with as a player, or that that were shown off at E3?
Cyberpunk, obviously. I was super stoked about Spider-Man after playing that. I can't wait to play that game. Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I mentioned before. I was very into this game called The Messenger, which is this 2D platformer indie game, sort of like Ninja Gaiden. I was into Anthem. It feels better than it looks. I was into Mega Man 11. I was into other games that I'm not remembering right now, but lots of cool stuff.
Anthem feels better than it looks.
Yes, 100%.
That's good to know.
That's good news. That's good news.
And clunky for a lot of people.
Yeah, the
so that's-
jetpack flying around feels really cool. It adds this whole new dimension that isn't in Destiny. I don't think the shooting, obviously, nothing compares to Destiny as far as just like shooting aliens in the face. But I am very curious to see what Anthem looks like and if it's worth playing.
Nice.
You talked about your favorite games there, but like, what is it in particular that about those that stood out for you?
Well, with Spider-Man, it was just like swinging around open world New York. I'm totally on board with that game. Just looks and feels incredible. I'm super.
As a New Yorker, did it was it right? Because I'm I don't know. I have no idea. I've never been to New York, but
yes,
swinging around New York is it feels like home. You visit your
felt
apartment?
like home. Felt right. And it was very much like. Hey, say hi to the camera. That's my wife getting home. It's very much
by the way.
Swinging around, very Arkham style. Reminded me a lot of Arkham Knight, in that you're kind of floating around New York and beating up people and using all these special abilities and stuff. That was cool. Mega Man 11 felt like what I would want from a modern Mega Man game.
Sure.
Anthem, like I said, felt cool to zip around and fly around. What else did I mention? Yeah, I mean, lots of cool stuff. Cyberpunk looks awesome. I'm very excited to play that. And the cool thing about that is that you know that the people who made it just made one of the best games ever. So you can have a lot of faith in them to come out with something awesome.
We have two quick like lightning questions that you have to answer for our fans. Okay. Don't think about it. Just answer. What's your favorite drink and snake? Go.
Drink and snake. Seltzer and rattlesnake.
Nice.
Okay.
Dig it.
You're loading into Destiny, and you have to select a character to play, and you're really excited
Warlock.
to play.
Yikes. That's a yikes.
I figured.
Yikes.
I regret this entire
Yikes
interview.
with me, dog.
I got one more thing that I want to say also about the book. Most of the chapters were amazing. Obviously, the Destiny chapter. Obviously, I was super excited to hear about that information.
Thank you.
The Stardew Valley one is definitely my favorite, 100%.
Yes.
Because that story was just amazing. Just like.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Hearing the evolution of like, it's just a couple more months, man. Just I'm doing this like vision quest of discovering myself in the digital world of making the art and the assets and learning how to program. Just need a couple more months, and like it just keeps going. And then like the typical story would be that, well, it just didn't go anywhere. And then he goes,
It
goes and
just
gets a
never
real
finished.
job.
But he actually finished it.
He had a Hollywood finish, essentially.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
He just released a multiplayer, didn't he? Like a few months ago.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
Although
crazy.
that was actually developed by someone at the publisher Chucklefish. But yeah.
Good for him.
yeah.
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 Well, Jason, it's man, thank you very much. I know you're a busy guy and it's late at night there. We really appreciate you coming on. Like I said, you made Briar's year. He's just,
That's true.
he's been bugging me forever, and I really appreciate you responding. I know you didn't know us from anybody, and you taking the time to jump on our show. It means a lot. So
Sure. Yeah. Next time
thank
I
you
have
so
to
much,
interview
Jason.
you because I want to hear all about the summit, what the summit was like. So
yeah, absolutely.
next time I have to come and ask you all the questions.
And also, yeah, we're no longer under NDA, so absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And
That's true.
there was also we also are heading off to GuardianCon, and
Yeah.
there's a charity live stream right now. We're over $2 million for St. Jude,
Sweet.
and
That's awesome.
it's,
Congrats.
this community is
Crazy.
really bonding together. And
That is
sorry, it's
Pope
super loud outside of my
muting his
house.
mic, right? Yep.
Yeah, apologize. All right, well, thank you very much. I think we're gonna wrap it up here, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. So yeah.
Let
So people
Jason put about his social media
Yeah.
and his podcast
Yeah.
and where he
Let's
works.
get the
and all that.
deets, man.
Yeah, so you can find me normally on Kotaku or on Twitter at Jason Schreier, SCHREIER. You can sign up for info about my next book at tinyletter.com/Jason Schreier, same spelling. And you can buy my first book, Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, at any store you would like, or get it from your local library. Support libraries. I'm very
I did the
pro-libraries.
audiobook version. I loved it.
Yeah, the audiobook version is cool. Read by Ray Chase, aka Noctis from Final Fantasy 15, who's
Nice.
awesome.
Amazing.
You can find my podcast, Kotaku Split Screen, on any of your podcasts, your favorite podcast provider. And I think that's all I have to promote.
Thank you very much, Jason.
Yeah,
cool.
This was really a pleasure. This was a lot of
Thanks,
fun.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming
Yeah,
on.
thanks
Yeah,
for having
seriously.
me.
Thank you.
And for all the kind words. I appreciate it.
Are we doing sign-offs for SideQuest?
Yeah, just
Yeah?
do your thing.
All
Timothy.
right.
Yeah.
This-
go
Did
for
we
it.
want to announce all the stuff now?
Oh, yeah.
For GuardianCon?
So you're talking about actually, why don't you do it, Watts? Go
the
for it.
meetups and the skedaddles and the meetups.
Seems like there's some other stuff. Yeah.
We are going to have a booth at GuardianCon. It is the DCP booth. It's booth 7. I hear it's near Buffalo Wild Wings, so
Them
That's
wild
there's
dangerous.
food
wings.
near us. Also, you might want to get there early if you are going, because we have a very special shirt
Limited,
that is
right?
very, very limited. So if you want to get that shirt, it is beautiful. It's amazing. Go and get there early to make sure you can get the shirt. We're also going to have posters available there. We have meetups from your favorite Destiny creators happening. The entire Friday and Saturday is going to be meetups with everyone. So definitely get the GuardianCon app. If you do not know what's going on, get the app. Look at all of the meetups that are happening, because a lot of those content creators put their meetup for our booth in the GuardianCon app. Also, we have a fun thing happening Saturday evening, which is at the pub. It's called the Pub in Tampa. Very easy to remember.
just
it's
the pub.
It is a pub called the Pub. And that's from 8 p.m. until we all black out.
8 p.m. till we close, and it's going to be the upstairs. It is the tap room, and we also have the patio. So people will be filtering in and out, hold our communities all together, and we're telling everybody about it as well. So it's going to be a lot of good times happening there.
A massive DCP meetup
Yep.
with drunk pirate Briar. I've been promised.
Briar has
that.
to be a drunken pirate the whole time.
Well,
Accepted.
Challenge accepted. All right.
no one to hold them back.
So we're very much so looking for DCP. Thank you so much for watching. I am Tefty Teft. You can talk to me at Teft on Twitter. Catch my streams, twitch.tv/Tefty Teft. And every once in a blue moon, I post a playthrough on YouTube. Tefty Teft as well.
I'm Briar Rabbit. You can find me on Twitter. Just look for at the Briar Rabbit. You can find me on YouTube or Twitch. Look for Briar Rabbit. Or on Saturday night, you can find me pretty stinking drunk at the pub.
At the pub. Just the pub. The pub.
The pub.
I am
The pub.
Miss 5000 Watts. You can find me on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. Just search for Miss 5000 Watts.
And this has been Pope Bear. You can find me on Twitter at Pope Bear. Make sure to follow the podcast at DCP_live. And remember that this week we are not doing a live show for DCP Live. Tomorrow it is going to be on Saturday during GuardianCon from GuardianCon. And I believe it is at 3:30 Eastern Standard Time, right?
Yes. And it's going to be
3:30.
streamed on the Rare Drop Twitch channel.
Yeah, and we'll just
tweet it
follow
out.
us on social media. We'll post it. And thank you very much for our patrons for supporting us. You make this possible. We cannot thank you guys enough. To our Twitch subscribers and to those people who follow us on YouTube and all the places. So thank you very much and have a great evening.
Speaking of Twitch subs, we'll read those out after we roll credits. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
Bye.
All right, we are back. And
Hello.
Are we though?
Well, we're
Are we
back.
really?
We're back. We got so.
You're gonna get a lot of us. If you're going to GuardianCon, you might have DCP overload.
Yeah, this is gonna be DCP overload for sure. Let's see. Suzami and 97, 4 months. Welcome back. TCP Repentless with 4 months. Welcome back. Mana History with the 4 months as well. Great time for a resub. Agreed. Charlie Kilo 15 with 3 months. This gonna be good. I agree. It was good. It was a good podcast. Celestine 051 with 4 months. Mike Doctor 7711 with 4 months. Blue Moxie 2 with the new sub. Wolfa Red with 3 months. Sigma 1234 with 4 months. BMW 523XI with a new sub. Farmazing Chloe. Oh wait, no wait. Amazing Chloe, that's what it is. With the biddies. Thank you very much. Chris again with the 3 months. Ghost Dad 856 with 2 months. Genre None with a new sub. Link Floyd TV with a new sub. Agent Michael Scarn 1105 with 4 months. Wados with the 3 months says, love you guys. Keep up the great work. Thank you very much, Wados. King Recyclops with the 4 months says, not able to make it to Guardian Con. Hope all of you have a hell of a time. We will miss you, King. We'll miss you, man.
We will.
Trappist with 4 months says, great show as always, GG's. And Ringo 3999 with the 3 months. Welcome back, and thank you very much, guys, for the support. You were all too kind. That was our first ever SideQuest live.
I like it. I think we should do this every week.
We could.
That's a really good idea.
If we organize it.
Hey, wait. You guys?
What do you guys?
What do you guys think about that?
What do you guys think?
We're
Are you
gonna-
guys free on Saturday?
We're going to have to
Like
talk
Saturday?
about it afterwards for sure, because the scheduling.
No.
Yeah,
I mean, Saturdays we got this. We said
Yeah,
Saturday
Saturdays.
in the afternoon.
That's the only time that Captain Patty's not
At
out
noon.
on his
At noon,
adventures
right?
across the universe.
at noon.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Wait a
Here.
minute. Noon Eastern, right?
No.
Noon Pacific.
Oh.
Live on Twitch
So
with Captain Patty?
Cat and Patty live on Twitch the week, not this weekend, but next weekend, starting every Saturday. So
Every Saturday.
Hey,
yeah.
mark your
Chance.
calendars.
We could make that 1 p.m. Pacific.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Just
That's
because I
super
might
early
be a
for you.
little groggy at noon.
We might. I have no problem
We'll
with
see.
one.
One sounds good.
We were trying to
I
make
like
it for
one.
all those Euros out there so they could.
They're still awake.
They're still awake at 1. What time is that?
Yeah, I think they start going to bed at like 4 or 5 Eastern time. Yeah, it's right. It's right on the edge.
Just saying.
It
Usually,
will be their bedtime, night
We want,
time.
we want the Euros to feel some love.
just I'm just usually my head is hitting the pillow around 5 a.m. So just mark out 8 hours from there. You see where I'm at. You know.
My favorite mornings are the mornings that I wake up late and Tefty wakes up or goes to bed really late, or I wake up early and Tefty goes to bed late, so I catch the end of his stream as I'm waking up.
It's crazy. I hear you, Tefty. Let's find a time that works.
I agree.
Yes.
That'd be awesome.
But every week.
Every week.
Saturday.
Every Saturday.
Nice.
With Captain Patty.
With Captain Patty.
Coming back.
Arg.
Should be good. And guys, if you're listening to this right now,
I'm listening.
live right now.
I'm listening.
You're listening. They're listening.
I'm listening.
We're all listening.
Mm-hmm.
I'm listening.
Never mind. I'm not listening.
Yeah, I'm tuning out.
Let's go and read
Guardian Con, right?
Yeah.
I'll put it in.
Oh, I got this.
You sure?
/host/
No.
Host
No.
/
Raid.
space dash.
Raid.
Raid. /raid.
/raid.
Raid.
I thought it was host.
If you want to just host.
Oh,
So the difference is Raid gives the viewer the option.
Yeah, if you want to be like you're from 2017.
Here you go.
I've always done.
What is this,
host. Okay, never
2017
mind.
Twitch?
you know what,
/raid. Guardian Con. I got this. You ready to go?
We're ready. Right?
I'm not ready.
We're ready. See you in Tampa.
Tell me, Tufty. Tell me when to go.
Engage.
Done. Did I do it right?
You did.
I did
You
it
did.
right.
You did it right.
Pope,
We'll
I have
see
a
you
question
guys-
I want to ask
see you
you.
guys in
really
Tampa.
quick.
What is it?
Snaps would like to have 1 hour at the booth for her meetup.
She can. I told her she could.
Nailed it.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I left a
Well, she
mouse
asked me, like,
cursor
a
on your
minute ago.
face, on your
Is-
shoulder.
Really?
Yeah.
Poke.
Everybody who wants an hour can take an hour if they want. I just had it in half-hour chunks.
And it's gone. Bye, guys.